I'm Troy Thompson. Over the last 15 years, our family has worked hard to create a place we call the center of the universe. A place where our kids and someday our grandkids can come home to and laugh, have fun, learn how to work, pray, worship God, and be a place to celebrate life with all our friends. After a quarter century in uniform, I put away one set of boots for another, working on our acreage, improving the land, fixing some structures, and building new ones. We say, give back to the community, be useful, keep your hands calloused, and spread the gospel. This is a little place in a little state right in the middle of flyover country, from which cries out a voice in the wilderness to all who might want to listen, learn, and laugh along with us. This is our American dream. Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to Sunnyside. What a week it has been, and I'm not talking about here at Sunnyside. Things are always happening here, whether we're trying to cut hay and it rains all the time. Oh, I did cut hay, and it rained all the time. And now I'm having a problem getting it to dry, so I'm hoping that this will be like concrete, where you have to kind of wet it to make it cure properly. And perhaps later this week, it will warm up nice and hot, and I'll be able to turn it enough times to get it dry, and it won't have any issues, because it looked really good before I cut it, and it had to be cut. Now you know how I feel about hay. So the first hay crop of the season is a little wet, and we'll try to figure that out as we go. That's a small problem. That's a small problem compared to the ones that we're facing as a nation. And boy, I wonder what you think I'm going to say next. There are so many issues that I think we're dealing with, socio-politically and all of these other things that really can bring a person down. And sometimes it's hard to have a good view on things when you're trying to deal with the sunny side of life. Now, as I've said before, I am not a huge Trump fan. I supported Trump in 2016. I did vote for him in 2020. But if there had been a better presidential candidate from the Republican Party, that would have been ideal, I think, for everybody, because in my opinion, really just about any person can beat Joe Biden. He's clearly not able to take the stairs. He has a hard time finding his way around the stage, can't put a sentence together. He's just on the way out, and I don't think it'd be that particularly difficult to defeat him. So shame on the Democrats for not coming up with a better candidate, and shame on the Republicans for not coming up with a better candidate when they had the opportunity, both parties, to do so. Now, they both have their conventions coming up this summer, so they'll have the opportunity, I suppose, to do something completely different, and maybe they will. But what happened this past week, obviously, you're aware of. On May 30th, the former president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, was found guilty on, amazingly, all 34 counts of whatever charges they could muster. And I think we all knew, at least I believe, that it was just a kangaroo court. It was completely politically motivated and clearly intended to keep Donald Trump off of the campaign trail and out of the campaign in general, if they can. And we'll see what occurs, because it looks like they're going to do the sentencing. They plan this amazing Judge Marchant. He plans to do the sentencing for Donald Trump, just a few days before the Republican National Convention. That seems odd. Why would they wait so long? I heard Alan Dershowitz say on another podcast that I listened to that he felt that if he was the attorney, he would move immediately for sentencing so that they could deny it and then he could appeal it. And apparently that's something that many people have now lobbed onto and said, just demand to be sentenced now. Why wait? What's taking so long? You've been found on all 34 counts guilty, so this is clearly a legitimate court in the state of New York, in the city of New York and Manhattan, whatever it happens to be. So let's go ahead and do the sentencing right now. And I think that'd be a smart move, because then that would allow the appeals process, which inevitably is going to take place, to occur. And so in the meantime, we're left with a whole lot of questions. And the questions that I have are, like a lot of you probably, like, what does this actually mean for the election that's coming up in November? What does it actually mean for the two parties when it comes to their conventions? And will it mean anything? And so I've been listening and reading like you probably about what's going on. You probably also have an opinion. And what I haven't heard anyone say is make a little a tie to what I'm going to do today. And so I hope that you find this interesting, and maybe we'll get something out of it, because there's a few things that we have to consider. First of all right, so Trump is found guilty, and he's running against brain dead Biden. Obviously, the Democrats have nothing to offer. Their moral agenda is, and has not been for a long time, moral. They have allied themselves with very interesting leftists and some pretty crazy people, in my opinion, regarding their view of the family, their view of what they define as women's health. They have allied themselves with, just, in my opinion, many immoral and ungodly planks, if you want to look at it. Now, they probably don't see it that way. I'm sure they think that they're more moral than God himself, if there even is one. And the Republicans have done a pretty poor job of fighting back. But now, what the Democrats have done is they have given the Republicans and people who are not necessarily Republican or independent some pretty good fire. So that could be a problem. That could be a problem for the Democrats. From what I understand, it sounds like Donald Trump, even though he's been kind of cloistered in New York for the last month or so, has done pretty well in the swing states. In fact, is beating Joe Biden in the polling. Now, it's just the springtime. Summer has just begun. And so we'll see what happens as the weeks and months wear on until we get to the election. But still, it seems like they are their own worst enemy, which is fine with me, because in my opinion, their political agenda is the enemy in most ways. Now, one thing that happened when you keep Donald Trump in New York is he's able to just kind of trot around on his days off from court and campaign locally, which a lot of the people in Manhattan and a lot of the people in the other boroughs where he happened to stop by hadn't seen him do. And because that's what happens in the big cities. So we're lucky in Iowa because all of the candidates have to come here for the caucuses, although Trump didn't come here because he figured he had it, and he was right. So he just blew off Iowa back in February. And yet a lot of the bigger states like, California, New York, these huge, unless you're like given thousands and thousands or tens of thousands of dollars for a plate of sort of warm roast beef, then you're not going to have the opportunity to hear your candidate even speak. And so he had the opportunity to trot around the New York boroughs and make some impressions and do some rallies, and they were fairly successful. They weren't the tens of thousands of people that he would get in the arena type thing when he normally has been doing his campaign the last few times, but it is something to be said. There are people, believe it or not, and I understand if you feel differently, and sometimes I do too, when you look at the way that the jury went with the Trump trial, that there can't be anybody of any sense left in New York. And I think that there are. And I think there are a lot of working people that actually kind of identify with Donald Trump, which is weird because, in my opinion, he's never been a working dude. He's always been the son of a pretty rich guy, and he himself has always led this opulent lifestyle, and he has made the most of his brand as this kind of the originator of cribs, to be honest with you. And so he's just kind of this completely opposite hero for the working class, and yet he seems to identify with them way more than Joe Biden, believe it or not, unless you're a union member and you're totally besotted with the workers of the world unite mindset. And not even all of the unions are particularly keen on Joe Biden. So there's something about Donald Trump that makes people that, work for a living feel pretty comfortable with it. Perhaps it's the way he talks. He's a bit of a comedian. He is entertaining when he speaks. And obviously he doesn't really care what he says. And that's been evident for the last several years. So there's something to that. So he had the chance to trot around New York and kind of meet and greet and visit pizza shops and that type of thing. But he also had the opportunity to visit the Libertarian Party National Convention. And let me just say, I'm just put it out there right now. Like when I started this podcast, I had switched to the Libertarian Party. And I had said, I wasn't happy with the Republican Party where I grew up, and I'm still not particularly happy with the Republicans. I think they're pretty weak when it comes to actually getting anything done. They spend just as much money as the Democrats do, just in different ways, and they're a bit of a clown show, depending on who you're watching in Congress. Just as much as the Democrats, and I'm still, a little bit more beholden to the conservative Republican side, obviously, because of my faith than I am to the wild leftist side of the Democrat Party. But there's a lot of people in between there, and I don't know where they are in their walk in faith, but I think that they still have common sense. Now, when Trump stopped by the Libertarian Party, he was invited to come, and he accepted. Where else is he going to be? So he went and participated, and it didn't go well for him. They booed him because I have concluded that the Libertarian Party, of which I am still a registered Libertarian, although I don't know why, because they are worthless. They are absolute clown show people, and they nominated this Oliver character, and he is the last person that I would vote for. Like, what a joke! Absolutely not the person that I want to be president of the United States. Not the person that I want to represent America when it comes to what I think American values are. I am. There's no way. And Trump was absolutely right. They were jeering him, and he said, "Look, if you want to get more than 3%, you should vote for me." And he was right about that. But 3% would be an astonishingly high number for the loser Libertarian Party, who cannot get anything together. What they agree on is that we spend our money incorrectly. The government has too much power, and most people should be allowed to smoke weed if they want to. And when you boil it down to that, I mean, okay, that's fine. But if that's what you're building your party on, you cannot be successful. And they always are nominating clowns for president. And so it is just, in my opinion, actually, I was reminded of this by Ben Shapiro, listening to him a little bit. And obviously he is not a libertarian, although he does subscribe to some of the very conservative libertarian economic values. However, he pointed out that if you're, Gary Johnson was probably the last person that had any success, and even that was ridiculous. So the libertarians had their convention. They proved that they are irrelevant again, and that they really are just all about fundraising so that they can continue to exist. That's all that they know. They're never going to win anything. They don't take anything seriously. They don't have any viable policy decisions. Now, I think that, on the other hand, I like reason. I think that they write well. They think well, the more serious ones. But even those people, listening to some of those folks on their podcast, for the Libertarian Reason podcast, for example, they sound to me most of the time like the unpopular smart kids who sit at the lunchroom table dressed all in black and just make fun of all of the other kids in the school because they think that they're really cool, but deep down they're just sad that they aren't part of one of those other groups. And I think that is pretty descriptive of the Libertarian Party. Now, I've never participated in any Libertarian Party activities. I did once consider, and I did drive down to go to a state meeting down in Des Moines where the Libertarians were gathered, and that was the closest I got. And I drove past, and they had literally just rented like a B&B, and there was terrible parking. The bunch of people dressed in jean cutoff shorts and cutoff shirts, and people hanging around, and just out in the yard. And I'm like, what is this? Because I've been to conventions before, and this is some state gathering, and I was like, this is. I didn't go. I drove by a couple of times. I looked at them. They kind of peered at me, wondering whom I might be. And I'm like, nope, not interested. And that was it. So where do I stand? I'm clearly not a very good libertarian. I wasn't a very good Republican. And I don't know. I certainly would not be a good Democrat. So I don't know where that leaves me. Maybe it leaves me right there with where you are, the ever-growing independence of the United States of America. Those coveted group of people who in times past, when I was very Republican, I would say, how can there be an undecided? How can there be an independent? How can you be this deep into a presidential election and be truly undecided? I'd never bought that, and I'm not undecided at this point, and I'm rarely undecided, to be honest with you. But I guess a lot of people are undecided. But maybe that's just a cop-out and an easy way to say, I don't want to tell you yet because I don't want to deal with any consequences. And also, I'm afraid of being wrong. So perhaps the deal. So Trump left the Libertarian Convention. And I don't think he cared. He just proved the point that the libertarians are a joke and they're never going to get anything done. So ignore. And if you're listening to this and you're a libertarian and that offends you, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. The Republicans should have nominated a better candidate, and the Democrats obviously should have nominated a better candidate. And what I said from the very get-go of this podcast almost 2 years ago, or over 2 years ago now, it's just like, or whatever it's been. We need as many political parties as we have NFL teams. If we have 32 political parties, then they have to fight it out and work together. And then you can find probably somebody that is actually, probably a group that is kind of closer to what you believe. And maybe then we can get somewhere. But this dichotomy between the Republicans and the Democrats is not going to work. And George Washington warned us of it, and it's not gotten any better since then. In fact, it's gotten tremendously worse. So Trump leaves the Libertarian Party, doesn't care, goes back to court, finds out that he's guilty of, 34 crimes on all counts or whatever. And now potentially each one of those could come with like 20 years or something like that. So he's just got this incredible number of possible years that he could be in prison. And if he was sentenced, and we'll just have to see what that leads to and what his lawyers decide to do. And it is a clown show. It's just a clown show. And enough people have talked about all of that so that I don't really have anything more to add about the legal workings, whether this was a good argument or that was a good defense or they should have done this or what's going to. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't care. I just look at it. I can see it probably like you, my friend, and go, this is a joke. It's terrible. And we clearly see what the Democrats are doing. They are so they're so encrazed. Is that a word? They're so crazy, let's just say, about Donald Trump that we know that they will absolutely shatter all what would be considered rules, I suppose, of common culture to just say we're going to do this because we have to save the republic. Of course, in my opinion, nothing that they've ever done has been close to saving the republic whatsoever. They've absolutely done everything the opposite. And they've turned the word progressive into an antonym because there's nothing progressive about anything in their agenda, in my humble opinion. These people are leftists, and the Republicans don't stand up to them. So this brought me to the conclusion of what I want to talk about finally today, and that is I'm going to draw a line between leftists and a few other things, and maybe that'll help get us to where we need to be to understand maybe how the next couple of months or so are going to roll out. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a statement, so we'll just see how it comes out. I believe that the leftists, which is what a good part of the driving force behind the big Democratic Party. All right, not every Democrat is a leftist, although they have leftist leanings. They're not all leftists, and they're certainly not all communists, and they're not bad people, and they're not even necessarily unfaithful people. So I'm not crazy like that. But there is a group of people that are driving the Democrat Party, and they are, in my opinion, sympathizers with Hamas. As we have seen throughout the news, they are sympathizers with Hamas and the Palestinian situation versus Israel. And the reason that they are that way, in my opinion, is because they act the exact same way. Democrats act the same way as Hamas, minus probably the murdery part, at this point, right? What they do politically is the same thing that Hamas does physically. In other words, they commit, in some way, acts of terror, and I'm going to step that back a little bit so we understand. When you physically commit acts of terror, it's because you are so physically, militarily incapable of overcoming a superior military foe that which is your enemy, that you have to do these nasty little things like blow up bistros and use human shields and hide in basements in schools and hospitals, and you have to do all of these nasty things, hijack planes like they did back in the 80s and notoriously 9/11. And those are things that you do when you are ultimately a militarily weak, unstated group. You don't have a state, you don't have an army, you act like you are, but when it comes right down to it, you're not capable of force on force action. So you have to act in a terroristic manner. And so you create terror in a way that scares people, thus the term, and that makes people say, well, let's just leave them alone. Let's, whatever. And so that's the technique of terror. So politically, when you realize that you do not have a moral agenda, that you do actually not have any good policy ideas, you will go ahead and use everything you can in these insidious, insipid, and cowardly little ways to divert the actual trajectory of, in this case, a national election. But it's more than that. And this is what I think is the most important part. Because both sides are weak, antagonistic, self-centered ne'er-do-wells. Now, that's kind of mean, but whatever. They do also, both Hamas or Palestinians and leftists in general, blame the world, everyone else in the world, for all of their problems, which of course are problems of their own making. In most cases, not all the time. Sometimes people actually are mean to other people and they do terrible things, and it isn't your fault. But for the most part, if you're not a victim, how can you be a good leftist? If you just don't have a victim status, you're just probably not going to make it in the leftist world or in the progressive world. And so they relish this victimhood, and they have no regard for life. Hamas has no regard for life, particularly the children, because they'll hide in schools, they'll hide in hospitals, they'll hide in neighborhoods, and then they love it when the Israeli rockets or the Israeli soldiers come in and fight them, and then innocent people die. They love it because the world media just eats it up. So they will clearly sacrifice children. They'll absolutely hide behind women and children. And they'll pile the bodies up as if they were sandbags in a fighting position from which they will inevitably abandon and run away to the next sandbag position of human bodies. And the leftists do the exact same thing. They don't care about the children. They love abortion. Let's have an abortion party. They just love the idea of killing children and having the babies all the way up to birth. They can pretend like they don't, but, it is infanticide. And to be on that side of the argument makes you morally inept, in my opinion. And so I don't see a big difference between hiding behind children in a school or in a hospital and then claiming that you care about the children while you're shutting down the schools with the teachers unions for COVID, and at the same time advocating for abortion and all these other crazy things that really have not got the children's best interests in mind. So they're similar in that way, and that's maybe a stretch for some, but I'm going to go with this because it's my show and I can do what I want. So there you go. It is also, in both cases, they have this certain kind of religiosity. Now, I have a religiosity, right? A faith, a walk with God as a Christian. And they also have a religiosity. Obviously, Hamas has a religiosity that they are following, and they're backed by Iran, and they're backed by their fellow states that are, to some degree, that are surrounding them, but don't want them to live in their country by any means. Like no Muslim states want the Palestinians to live in their country. So there is a religious nature to it and a fervor for their cause. And in the same way, so too are leftists. They have this zealot type actual religiosity about whatever the most recent secular argument for insanity happens to be, whether it is the transgender, transing the kids, sometimes with their environmental stuff, they get a little crazy. Not always. I mean, I like to take care of the world too, but all of these things, and the science, we believe the science, and that if we don't believe the science, we change the people who are in the science and threaten them so that they won't get any funding, and then they'll change the science so that it aligns with what we want them to say. And all of these things are very similar to a kind of a religious nature, which is, I think, understandable because people, in my opinion, are built to worship, and we're supposed to be worshiping God. But if you're choosing to not worship God, you're going to worship something else in the world, and that is going to lead you down the road to perdition. But there you go. So there's a religiosity as well. In the same way, I think that both of these groups, Hamas and the left, particularly the more communist type leftists, absolutely seek the annihilation of any God-centered state, particularly this Hebrew type God. Obviously, with Hamas, that means the annihilation of the state of Israel. And for leftists, it is the annihilation of the church in the body of Christ around the world. And whether it was Marx or just regular folk today leading the leftist charge, the concept is that they do need to break down the family, break down the belief in God, break down the churches, break them away from the Bible if they can, and they have been successful in many, many ways in many places, and most recently the United Methodist Church, as they've experienced a new form of apostasy, which is, of course, what you do when you go against God and the Word of God, and do so because you believe that you're smarter and you know better, and the secular world is wiser than the thousands of years that have come before us in the human condition, particularly as it's laid out in the Bible. And so both these groups, the leftists and the Hamas, seek the annihilation of any God-centered state. Now, in the same way, here's the fun part. Once these people, Hamas or the leftists, have pushed their antics too far so as to be dealt with by force, they are always pushed back to the caves into which they belong, losing all the territory they once held in a short period of time, because they're pretty easy to defeat physically, because they are absolutely terrible warriors and are easily defeated in combat. So then they cry like babies, wailing to the sympathetic and moronic eyes and ears of the world media of their oppression, and they demand all the land they lost fair and square in a battle they provoked to be returned to them. Well, give it back to us. This is the current situation in Israel with Hamas since October 7th, if you recall, last year in 2023. And it is now about to be the case, I believe, in the United States of America since May 30th, 2024. So let me jump back. What was October 7th? In case you didn't know, Hamas, the PLO, Iran, etc., the usual nefarious characters, invaded Iraq, killed about 1,200 people, took about 350 hostages as bartering tools. Apparently, there's some argument about this, did some pretty nefarious and terrible, wicked things in the process. And since that time, Israel has decided that they are going to get rid of Hamas. And the world at first was, yeah, that makes sense, because that's pretty terrible. And since that time, fairly quickly, a good part of the world has turned against Israel, including the powerhouse nations of Norway. The land of my ancestors. Oh, the powerful Norwegians haven't done anything useful since they conquered Paris. And that was in the 1100s, I think. So maybe the 1000s. I mean, it's been a while since they've been useful. And but they have decided that that's the case, as have many of the Scandinavian and European countries in general. They've kind of started going against Israel and supporting Palestine. But that isn't particularly, surprising to me. And I say this with love and caution, understanding that, well, in Norway's case, I mean, they were Hitler's dream, to be completely honest. Like, if you looked like that, then you must be the superior race. So there's this underlying truth in all of Europe where there's just a little bit of anti-Semitism there. And it's still there, in my opinion. And it's also in the United States. Obviously, It's in the Middle East. I mean, the Mideast has got that. I mean, there's one Jewish state in the entire world, and all guns are pointed at them. And so nothing new there. But that has always been the case. We've talked about this biblically and what occurs with Israel. And, sometimes Israel screws it up. I'm not certain that modern day Israel is the land is holy. I believe that. But I don't believe that. The Bible has shown time and time again when the Jews go the wrong direction, God, smacks them down a little bit. And so I don't know if that's what's happening now. Can't speak for God. I just know that history has some examples of how the Jewish state can go awry when they take their eyes off of God. And the result is, foreign invasion and that type of thing. So they've always had enemies. There's nothing new there. But that was a pretty bad situation. I think we all agree. Well, not all. There's, Ilhan Omar and other folks and to my north that they don't seem to think that it was a bad situation. In fact, they actively cheer on and support Hamas and other terrorist organizations because that's the kind of people they are. And those are the kind of people in Michigan that Joe Biden is just desperately hoping will help him carry that state. Good luck with that, Joe and your crew. Now, when that happens. So what is happening right now? Israel is kind of holding back. They're still fighting the war with Hamas, and I think that they're completely allowed to do whatever they want. They're a sovereign nation, and they're going to do their thing. Are they always right? No. Are they necessarily with God? No. Are they all good people? No. And have they been kind of nasty and wrong in some cases? Yes, as has every other nation in the world. Do they have a right to defend themselves? Undoubtedly, and they will. And they have the ability to do so. So they're continuing this fight. Now, when you push Israel too far, as it looks like the rest of, Hamas and the Iranians and a lot of the European and the Western world, they have, I don't know why their opinion matters to a sovereign nation, but we think it does. And so when I do know that if Israel is pushed too far, that they will smoke you. And they have done it every single time that they have been tested. Now, we can take a look at, for example, the 6-Day War. Who was involved with that back in 5 days? Well, 6 days. So June 5th through the 10th, 1967. What had happened is that started way back in 1956. So it's not like it just suddenly occurred. Back in 1956, so Israel became a state, like I think in 47, 48. Okay, they have their little borders drawn out. They're created. Great Britain's got their hand in everything, and then. So since they created in 1948, so 8 years, 1956, Egypt starts tightening and finally completely denying passage of Israeli ships through the Suez Canal, which, by the way, was that France and England that built that? So anyway, so Egypt's like, no Israeli ships can come through the Suez Canal. So that's kind of hard for trade. If you have to go all the way around Africa to get to the other side of the world, that's a problem. And so they were preventing Israeli flagged ships from going through the Suez Canal. Now, Great Britain and France, back in the day, they needed to secure Egypt so that they could continue their oil trade for the world wars, and they did so much to the chagrin of the Egyptians. So not a lot of friends with the Egyptians and the British and Western Europeans in general. After World War II, Great Britain had a great big hand in the creation of the State of Israel. And that really irritated the Egyptians, and voila. Unrest continues with the help of a new group back then called the Muslim Brotherhood. And there was a dude named Nasser, Gamal Abdul Nasser. Shaken, not stirred. Nasser, who was like a good socialist, nationalizes the Suez Canal, which is what you do when you're a socialist. You nationalize stuff, private enterprises for the good of the people and also for me, which was built by the French, etc. And it closes, and then he closes it for good to those the Jews in Israel. He's closing it to the Israeli ships, and Israel has had about enough of that after several years. By the time 1967 comes around, they attack Egypt. Like they just attack Egypt because Egypt had continued to tighten and tighten and tighten and got worse. And then they backed off for a little bit, in the 50s. Eisenhower's involved with all of that. And in that crisis, the Suez crisis, it becomes clear that the two new world powers are absolutely the United States of America and dun, 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 like the good old days, the USSR, because it turns out that Great Britain and France are all kind of useless. And so the United States and America kind of that's where it really kind of begins, the mid-50s right there. And so they kind of hold things apart. They get things straightened out a little bit. Nasser, he's embarrassed. He has to quit, but he comes back in the 60s and he rages again and closes the canal and a variety of other things. So they just kind of, kick, push. And eventually Israel has had enough of it. And they turn around in early June 1967, and they go to war. They attack Egypt, who was allied with Syria, which is flanking Israel's north. Egypt is allied with Syria, and they're to the north. You got Jordan, you've got Iraq, you've got Lebanon, and it's 6 against 1. And in a matter of 6 days, Israel kicks everyone's butt. Just kicks their butt. Like, why did you even? What are you doing? And then they end up. I mean, when I say kick their butt, they end up owning. So that tiny little Israel that was set up, in 1947 by the great powers that be in the West, and they end up owning the Sinai Peninsula, the Suez Canal, Gaza, the southwest part of Syria, all the former Palestinian region known as the West Bank, which does include Jerusalem and the southeast corner of Lebanon. And they did that in 6 days. 6 Arab nations smoked. And then the world says, you got to give it all back. I don't think that Israel particularly wants to control the Sinai Peninsula. I don't think that they want all that. I don't think they want the work involved with controlling that many populations of people who absolutely hate them because of their faith. And so they did give it all back. And we get back to the 1967 where we kind of redraw some of the lines, and you get this West Bank area back to the West Bank, which is kind of controlled. It has the Arab or Muslim control. Then you've got the Gaza Strip, which is just this tiny little area on the southwest part of the nation of Israel. That's run by, that's where the Palestinians are, and that's where they claim that they're in an outdoor prison for all of this time. And nobody since then wants anything to do with them. Egypt's not taking them. Jordan's not taking them. No one's taking the Palestinians. And so they've got this little tiny section of land down there in the corner of Israel. And so when they say from the river to the sea, they're talking about the Jordan River, which is the eastern border of Israel, and the Mediterranean Sea. So that's the whole country of Israel. They're talking about taking the whole darn thing. What's funny to me is that they can't. They can't. They absolutely cannot. So they spend the next 50-some years just committing acts of terrorism. And when Israel's had enough, they hit them with a hammer. And then they kind of crawl back into their holes, and then they cry to the world, and then they go and continue to do this. So the world sends them some aid packages. They keep all of the aid for their terroristic military operations, and this goes on and on. In fact, the Biden administration spent about, $350 million building a floating dock so that they could get supplies to Gaza. And then that has floated away now. So that was gone in about a month, and it didn't work. Any supplies that were delivered went straight into the hands of the enemy. The leader. It doesn't go to the people, never does. And so it's just a terrible situation. You probably know all of this. So why am I telling you this? Well, I think it's the exact same thing that's about to happen to some degree, not the violence, I hope, after May 30th with the Donald Trump thing. They finally they've kicked and prodded and pushed and done all these obviously lawfare and nasty things trying to interfere with an election, which is a kind of a hot button phrase anymore, but that's what this is. Like, if we can just keep Donald Trump from being on the campaign trail, then maybe if we hide Joe Biden, in his basement, then maybe we'll squeak by. And they are going to be completely wrong about this. So what they've done is they have kicked and prodded and poked and really committed pretty egregious lawfare in a corrupt way, in a corrupt court, in my opinion. And the result is that now you've got a whole lot of people that probably maybe weren't even going to vote for Trump. Now they're going to do it because they can see how ridiculous the Democrat Party has acted and how nefarious. And so what will happen is that they will get their butts kicked. They will do everything they possibly can because it's going to be a nasty election for the next few months, and they'll lose. And then just watch. What will happen then could go a couple of different ways. Regardless, when they lose, they're going to say that that there was probably, then they're going to say that there's election interference or some crazy thing like that. And they're like the pros at that, clearly in broad daylight. But at the same token, what they have now done is opened up this Pandora's box of just political misbehavior. That's a nice way of saying this, right? What will stop this cycle of prosecuting former presidents? What will stop that from happening? And I'm not the only commentator, certainly not the only commentator, because I do this once a week, and this has been news for a while, so people have already said the same thing. They are going to, there's a possibility that the Republicans will grow a pair and actually start retribution-wise, going after former presidents like Joe Biden when he loses this fall, or the Biden family, or the Obama family, or the Clinton family, or whoever, whatever, members of Congress. Justice will be served. And if they did the exact same thing and found people, in kangaroo courts in other parts of the country that are friendly to a Republican verdict, then this will go on and on and on. And I guarantee you that if that happens even one time, right, the Democrats, the leftists, will act just like Hamas, the Palestinians, and they will want their land back. They will be mad that they were attacked. And can you believe it'll be the same thing. The absolute same thing will occur. So I think it's a pretty good possibility that they have fired up the American people. We'll see what happens over the course. The American people have a pretty short-term memory problem. And so maybe this will it'll work out perfectly for the Democrats. And maybe they are just geniuses when it comes to political maneuvers such as this, because they are pretty good at redefining the English language, making words mean new things, twisting the role of values and ethics, and really depending on kindness as a weakness of conservatives. They absolutely depend on the Christian sentiment that you should be humble and kind, that you should be meek and mild. And we used to say in the military, and I'm sure it's been said many other places, do not mistake my kindness towards you for weakness. And I feel like they may have awoken the dragon a little bit on this. So we'll see how that pans out. But I assure you that if it turns out in turnabout is fair play when it comes to lawfare following the election in 2025, the cries in the media, the leftist media, the cries in the Democratic Party will be exactly like that of Hamas. Bloody murder. The victimhood will be tremendous. Can you believe this egregious... Because they're the same people. It's the same tactic. They will kick and prod and push and push and push and push until, just like a toddler in a grocery store throwing a fit, Mama finally throws down the hammer and straightens them up. And then, how dare you? So we'll see what happens. But mark my words, that's how they act. There's no different than Hamas, except for maybe the murder part. But they're definitely of the same ilk when it comes to pushing and acting the way they do, and then being surprised when they finally, their opponent turns around and smokes them, because they're pretty easy to defeat when it comes to an honest fight. And they don't play honest. Now, here's the thing, though. I'm going to twist it another direction, in case you don't like where this diatribe has gone so far. I'm going to go a little bit different direction and take it back a few more decades, just to remind us that, we have to be cautious as a people, that you can be upset. You can feel the injustice and the really kangaroo court situation of this lawfare deal in New York, Manhattan, all these other places around the country, Georgia, so on and so forth. You can feel that way. You can vote accordingly. You can express your opinion. You can change the people that are in Congress. You can get more active in your political parties. You can be more active in your local parties. You can actually do your job as a citizen and express an opinion and hold fast to values that matter. However, and stand up and fight. Stand up and not physically. I mean, or I guess, you could, but I'm not advocating. That's not necessary. If you just stand up and fight and are not afraid of, blue-haired and green-haired and orange-haired people yelling at you as loud as they can with no basis of an argument or understanding of world history, then by all means, you should definitely do that instead of, lashing out. Because we have to be careful. That's the unfortunate end of going too far. You can conquer your enemies all the way through the Sinai Peninsula to the Suez Canal, little bits of Jordan and Syria. You can take over everything in a matter of 6 days. The sheer might and willpower of your moral turpitude might be enough to do so. So as you vote for Trump and carry out these actions to change and make the media and the world very much aware that you're not buying the crap that the Democrats are serving up for lunch on a daily basis, just be advised that this too is how you did get Nazi Germany. Now, I say this cautiously because one of my pet peeves with the media and historians, wackos, is that, and just general people hanging out, trying to make, historical comparisons. There was one Adolf Hitler. There was one. He's dead. He's gone. He was evil. Everybody agrees on that. No one else is Adolf Hitler. Other people might be their own version of evil. He was his own thing. So you don't call people Hitler. That's stupid. It's annoying. It's wrong. It's historically inaccurate. And it's a weak argument that can be really beaten down by anyone with half a mind for history. But we can learn from history and understand that after World War I, the Allies, the French, the British, they were so wicked and harsh and demanding of war reparations on the nation of Germany, and the punishment that they felt entitled to by the Armistice Agreement, that it caused tremendous problems economically for the people of Germany. Okay, they deserved it. They shouldn't start wars. That being said, the result was a growing nationalism that did not end up well and resulted in the Second World War. So, in part, the people who won the war of World War I created World War II to some degree by the actions that they took with reparation. We must be cautious to not create what the left says that Trump will be. The left will say that Trump is going to be a dictator if he's elected. That's why we must save the republic, as if they know what democracy or republic actually is, or what liberties or freedoms are all about. But they say that so freely that it almost seems that they may make it from their own actions that they've been doing up to this point come true, because you've now created an entire momentum against your idiotic plans and actions that the nation will probably not, it will be in enough of a majority and with the Electoral College that Biden will be defeated. And then when that happens, do we, the people that say, vote for Trump and vote for a change of administration in a peaceful manner, how far does one go in reparation? You must do something, because just like Hamas, they only understand brute force. And we need to clean out our bureaucracies, our institutions of these leftists and these people that really have a completely different and ungodly agenda for the United States in mind. We need to clean out our churches in the same way. We need to clean them out. And when I say clean them out, I mean put them out. Show them the door. Say bye-bye. Don't be afraid to say adios. Come back when you're willing to repent. Like that type of stuff. Not obviously violence and, things that would lead to war and bloodshed. That's not what we're advocating for at all. However, if in the future Trump is elected, and it is, and they decide to do some house cleaning, then what? And do they go and do they start, nefariously just, prosecuting everybody that they possibly can? Do they set up kangaroo courts like they did in Manhattan and what they're trying to do in Georgia and all these other places? Do they do that thing? And do they take the Sinai Peninsula and do they hold on to it? Or do they give it back because they don't want that type of management in the case of Israel? Otherwise, if you hold on to it, you run the risk of having to hold on to the next piece of land. And you go, from one part of an annexation to Poland and to France and to an entirely different situation. And then you end up going into Russia and getting turned back and all of the other stuff. So we have to be careful as a country to know the difference between an obvious problem with our legal system and a problem with what just happened on May 30th and the whole clown show that was these, this court. And we have to deal with folks that are advocating for that, particularly, these prosecutors and judges and folks that think that they can use the law to bend to their will in that regard. That has to be dealt with, and it has to be done with in a fair and open and correct way. And we need to do some house cleaning, as mentioned, and we also need to know where to stop. And that is your job. That's our job. That's you and me. Like, we have got to be able to say, okay, spank the child, let them know who's boss. But at the same time, we're not lent to abuse. And it's okay to have people have different opinions and to have all of these, crazy ideas and to put them forward. And it's okay to let people complain, and it's okay to let people play the victim. And sometimes the victims actually are victims. Not many of Americans are victims, but they act like they are. But even the case, we allow for that. And so we have to be good at figuring out what it is that we want to accomplish by winning, and that we focus on the best things for the United States of America, that you're not afraid to bat down the silly and, just dumb arguments from the left and their ideas about how money should be and what money is and what gender is and all of these other crazy things that are causing us so much heartache. And the average person sits out there and goes, well, that's stupid. That's not even true. And it makes you so frustrated you don't even want to deal with it. But that's how we got to this place in the first place. We didn't deal with it when we should have. And so it was with the case in 1956, then 1967 with Israel. So it has been the case to some degree when it came to October 6th. So it was with World War II and so on and so forth. The conflicts that humans are constantly involved with is about power, and it is almost always without the intentional effort to figure out what it is that God wants. So Yeah, there you go. I've drawn a conclusion. I guess I don't know if I did a very good job, but I haven't heard anybody else do that. Maybe because it's so wildly inaccurate. That could be. I could be wrong. It wouldn't be the first time. But if you act like a lunatic enough, eventually people are going to say, okay, you're a lunatic. And then more than likely, that person who is acting like a lunatic will take offense that people call them a lunatic, even though that is what they were doing the entire time. And I think that's what's going to happen. There's a lot of lunacy. I think the American people have had just about enough of it. I'm not saying that Donald Trump is the solution to the lunacy. No, he's still Donald J. Trump. But they have accidentally turned him into a victim. Like, that's their playground. And they have turned that guy into a victim. What were you thinking? Maybe they weren't. All right, folks, listen. I hope you have a blessed week. I hope this hay that I've got cut dries out. I hope that God sends the wind that is warm and dry and dries up the field so the farmers can get back in there and do what they need to do. And that my tiny little 7 acres of hay can dry out so that I can bale it up and sell it to my friend Don. And I hope that you have been blessed by whatever nonsense that I've been saying. I hope that you don't get too crazy as you listen to the news. I hope that you have the opportunity to just sit down and relax like we do here at Sunnyside at the front porch and watch the sunset, have a drink, think about the good things in life, be thankful for our family, our friends, and for the love of God and all things that we can do to be the sunny side of someone else's life. I want to thank all our friends and guests for stopping by for this episode of the Sunny Side of Life. All the Sunny Side of Life players who stopped by, creative support provided every day by my incredible wife Heidi and our fantastic 4 boys. Thanks to every one of our listeners. That means you. A big shout out to my brothers and sisters in uniform holding the line around the world. Share the word, folks. Let the people know what we're up to. Subscribe so you never miss an episode and follow us on social media. All skits are written or adapted and directed by me, Troy Thompson, and are produced here at Sunnyside Farm Studios and delivered to all platforms by Buzzsprout. Music and sound effects are provided by Soundstripe. The Sunny Side of Life is a weekly production about our life on the family farmstead here in Iowa, the liberties we prize, and the pursuits which make us happy. Now, none of this is possible without Christ in our lives. For the Lord God is our sun and our shield. He gives us grace and glory. So may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may the sunny side of your life, liberty and pursuits, be in Christ, and made evident unto you each and every day, and give you peace.